Thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to be um, hosting retail strategies webinars on site criteria for expanding retailers. And we have Lacey Beasley, the president herself, presenting today. So I'll just hand it over to her expert hands and we'll get started. So thank you, Lacey.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you to all of you who are logged into the webinar today to talk about what economic development directors need to know when you're looking at retailers' site selection criteria. So we just love our partnership with SEDC, everything they do. It's incredible educational content. So we're honored to be presenting to you today about the retail side of things. Again, I always want to apply to SEDC for understanding retail, incorporated it in education because, as we know, traditional thinking and economic development for years ago kind of ignored retail and didn't incorporate it in economic development. And I know we call it community development, but we're just certainly seeing that grow so much with importance across our communities. And that's what we always want to do at Retail Strategies, is just have a passion for learning, for educating, and helping communities grow. A little bit about myself. I'm the president of Retail Strategies. We are a firm that's based out of Birmingham, Alabama. We work nationwide with municipalities to help them on national retail recruitment, small business support, and downtown revitalization. So there's a variety of communities that we've worked with over the last decade, over 1,000 communities. And what we are here to do is just to help serve needs, all things retail, all things real estate, all things downtown. So we have a lot. When I saw the registration list earlier, it was nice to see a lot of familiar faces and names on this. And so just appreciate all of you and your partnerships. Told you a little bit about Retail Strategies, but want to lean in on some of the partnerships that we have about what qualifies us to be here to share this content. We're partnered with the National League of Cities. We're actually their preferred company to provide education for all their members at National League of Cities. It's a program called Retail as a Catalyst for Economic Development. We are recognized by ICMA as an influencer in that space. Main Street America has designated us as a subject matter expert, and with ICSC. I'm actually right now in Florida at the ICSC Board of Trustees meeting. So we are very, very involved with ICSC. If you're not familiar with that, it's about 50,000 members that are all in commercial real estate with a focus in retail. It's all the way from retailers, developers, brokers, and communities all coming together for deal making on commercial real estate. And so I'm honored to be on the Board of Trustees, just representing the voice of the public sector in these meetings. One thing about Retail Strategies that we really want to emphasize is when we bring on a partner is that we maintain a strong ability to lean in on the human resources side, the human effort side of our partnership. So we maintain a 5-to-1 client to staff ratio. So for every 5 clients we have a new team member that comes on board. And we believe that data, it really helps inform deals, but it's people who make deals happen. And it's each of you doing things like today, leaning in on this webinar and educating yourself. So thank you again for the commitment that you've made to yourself and your community by participating in this webinar. We are going to share these slides afterwards. A little bit of housekeeping here. Feel free to enter in your questions in the chat throughout the entire webinar, and I will take those in the end. And if it's something I can't answer, then believe me, you will be hearing from my team to follow up. They are really the pros. We have about in Birmingham, with about 43 dedicated employees as a part of the Retail Strategies platform. So we also have a Fort Worth office and Atlanta and Auburn and Starkville. We have offices in all those places. So I'm very honored to work with a large team. And I don't always know all the answers, but I always have access to somebody who does. To give you a little bit of background on myself, I started in this industry about 20 years ago, initially doing GIS and research, working with all the big box retailers in Tennessee, out of Nashville, at a company called TSCG. And then from there, joined Retail Strategies about, at this point, almost 13 years ago, and just to really help communities. What in my experience at the shopping center group, I was doing a lot of site selection for those big box retailers and learning how to package up the communities. So that's what ultimately has led me to the path through a lot of volunteer work I did with ICSC to be on their board of directors now, and really with the support of the entire team. And what we always want to do is break down that wall between the public sector and the private sector so that we can build communities and be better communicators all the way around. So these are some slides from ICSC that are actually being presented to us, just very hot off the press, brand new information that is being delivered. This is one thing I think is a really important slide to look at that sets the stage for what's happening overall in the industry. Over the last couple of years, really, what we've seen is very limited new ground up, new construction with retail. There was a time when Amazon really was leading the lion's share of online sales, that there was a narrative about the retail apocalypse. Online sales are going to kill brick and mortar retail. And we all know that that is not true. It's proven that people like to shop in brick and mortar. Brick and mortar is here to stay. Online sales are still only about 16% of overall retail sales. But when you look at this breakdown, you can see since 2009 how retail sales have grown over 80%, how the GDP has grown about 40%, the US population by 12%. But new GLA, stands for gross leasable area of shopping centers, has only grown by about 7%. So we believe there's still a great deal of capacity for new ground up retail, whether that's a shopping center or a single tenant or strip center or grocery anchored center, and really even leaning more into mixed use development. There's still a lot of room for new retail to grow right now. And what we're struggling with in the industry is that the cost of construction's gone up so much. The cost of money, basically through interest rates, has gone up so much that it has made it hard for the retailers to pay their rent at the same increase that construction cost and financing have gone up. And so developers have a hard time making their pro forma work for new ground up construction. So what we've seen is as retailers file bankruptcy, then that has left empty boxes that the new and emerging retailers have been able to move into. One of the things we're always going to look at, and we have to study these trends, is which categories have year over year sales that are increasing. Because if you think about all this being driven by investors and Wall Street and private equity and venture capital, then they're putting money into the real estate and the brand. A lot of times there's a bifurcation between the brands, the real estate that's operating, and the business that's operating, the brick and mortar versus the actual land. A lot of times there's two separate owners that are a part of that. So there's strategies for investing on both sides of that equation. But the main thing that all investors want to know is how you, as the consumer, is shopping. And every time you spend your money, you're placing a vote for what you want to see in the future of the marketplace. And the more you're supporting, in this case, let's say health and personal care, the more you're spending money there, the more you're telling the marketplace, we want more brick and mortar to support that and back it up. And so that gives confidence to shopping center owners if they lease to brands within these categories, that they will not have concerns about closures or bankruptcies within those spaces. So we're constantly looking at category by category where those same store sales are increasing, because that ultimately leads to brick and mortar increases within that category. You see here where of all the categories, here's some that had some of the largest increases down to the smallest increases. The one we saw a decline year over year was really in building materials. And a lot of that was due to the spike we saw during the pandemic. And it's just now really starting to even out, drop back down. A lot of people canceled their family vacation and they did home renovation projects and started with outdoor and then that turned to indoor. So the reason that building materials is down year over year is that it's just because they had such a substantial increase over the previous 5 years. But you can see, the health and personal care. This is Ulta, Sephora, clothing and accessories continues to grow. And then, of course, we love to eat. Everything in restaurants is continuing to grow. So let's keep moving forward. One thing we're always looking at is who's expanding. So you have a lot of pressure as an economic development director to be hearing from your community saying, we want this brand, we want that brand. And people get really emotionally attached to the restaurants or the grocery stores or the brands that they're shopping at. And so, what's hard for you as an economic development director, if you want to recruit that brand to your city, if that brand is not building new locations this year, then it's a great deal of wasted time and effort if you continue to pursue them if they have no plans for expansion. So over the past 5 years, we've heard several communities say, I want more casual dining restaurants. I want Olive Garden and Applebee's and Ruby Tuesdays and Outback and some of those brands. And they just haven't really been building a lot of new locations. Now that's starting to change now. They are starting to expand again, but that's really hard to know that they're only going to do 5 locations across the country this year. And how are you going to be one of the 5 that wins their business? So what we like to focus on is who's opening most aggressively, and then how does that match up with our client communities? So we're constantly studying the investor reports that are given out on Wall Street, any kind of investor report that's out there. They love to tell their investors they're growing, because the way to make investors happy or to increase same store sales or increase your unit number. So you can see that there's a lot of store openings that are outpacing store closings last year. And a lot of this is driven by McDonald's, Dollar General, Crispy Chicken, 7-Eleven. So you can see where there was a little over 11,000 new, almost 12,000 new units that opened, and then about 8,000 units that closed. Well, because there's 8,000 units that closed, you hear about these bankruptcies. Let's take this a step further and look into bankruptcies. So in 2025, there were about 26 substantial bankruptcies that happened. And ultimately, of those bankruptcies, then you're going to look at the number of units that come into play. So that was about a little over 3,000 units that came out of those 26 bankruptcies. So think about Big Lots, Joann's, some of those brands. Those are in great shopping centers. It's great real estate. Bed Bath and Beyond was another one. And the retailers that are aggressively expanding right now, like Burlington, Ulta, TJ, Ross, they really got in bidding wars to want to come in and take that space that fit their footprint. It was in good shopping centers. And so they came in and everybody won ultimately. A lot of the new brands were able to penetrate markets that historically they were not able to penetrate. And the landlord won because they received a higher rent than they had been receiving off of Bed Bath and Beyond and Joann's and Big Lots. Also, there were a lot of exclusions that were tied to those leases that were freed up. So, not all bankruptcies are bad. I think that's important to know when you see the headlines about the bankruptcies. I also encourage you, when you see headlines about bankruptcies or closures, identify, is it a liquidation or a restructuring? That's really important. And then you'll know if that real estate is going to become available or not. So again, go ahead and put your questions in the chat as we go through this, and we will take those at the end. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's get a little more specific about categories. And we just kind of cherry picked a handful of brands that we hear requests from our communities a lot from, that they just want to learn more about. So let's take a dive and look at them. The first one is Buc-ee's. No, it's not Boosie's. It's Buc-ee's. And I know a lot of you are probably very familiar with this brand. Some of you might not be, but Buc-ee's is a essentially a gas station with a cult following. So imagine if Walmart and Cracker Barrel had a baby, then this is what you are looking at with Buc-ee's. It's amazing. They have about 120 fueling pumps that are there. They'll take up to 40 acres, and their store sales are primarily driven from the inside versus the fuel. It's what they sell inside that store. They really pride themselves on having the cleanest restrooms possible. So that's what they're known for. And they're primarily just locate on major interstate exits. Are really going to be more about that interstate traffic than the municipal population that's going to drive their store sales. They really have a cult following, and a lot of their advertising are just a series of billboards that are pretty funny that lead you up to Buc-ee's. You know, they're going to be known for their own brands or private label. About 50% of their products that they sell are the proprietary Buc-ee's. There's things like the beaver nuggets, there's the jerky apparel that they're going to sell. And typically, what they're going to do when they open in a new location, it's going to be anywhere from 18 to 24 months in um, from the time they announce that until they actually cash registers start ringing. So it takes a little bit of time, and it's about a 30 to $40 million investment that they're committing to the community. But what's important to know about them is their ownership model. They are family owned, they're privately held, and they contain the complete operational control. So they're 100% company owned. There's no franchising with Buc-ee's. And so with every brand, we always want to know how they're owned and then how aggressively they're expanding. And because they're privately owned, they don't have the pressure to meet a certain number that they promised to Wall Street. If they say we're going to do 40 new locations in the country this year, a publicly traded company would have to do that and then honor it. Buc-ee's just goes with good sites and expands as they have need. So that is Buc-ee's. They definitely prefer states that have no corporate income tax. So that's going to be Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and Wyoming. And they're extremely picky about their site selection. So they turn down about 95% of the sites that are presented to them. But they are great as a destination driver into an area. So if you haven't been to a Buc-ee's, I highly encourage you to go to one. It is truly an experience. And you can see that a Buc-ee's will do almost the same sales volume as a Walmart, and their average ticket price is it's nearly $100 by the time you get your gas and you go in and you buy your products. So awesome brand. We hear about a lot, and they're going to continue to expand. So let's talk about Wally's. Wally's is also in this space of gas stations. They're owned by a German family, and they have been since 1979, and they operate independently. So again, they're a private company that is very secretive about their operations and financials. They do international expansion. So they're all over the place. And they don't do national advertising. They're more word of mouth and in-store experience. And really about 80% of their product is the private label. So what they really pride themselves on is being compact, efficient, deliberate. They create deliberate scarcity, which creates a certain sense of urgency on their products. So they have about 4,000 SKUs versus a typical grocery store, which would have about 40 to 50,000 SKUs. On the employee model, they typically pay a bit above market average. So that's going to be anywhere from, $15 to $23 an hour. And their top crew can make about $40 an hour. Now, I should bring up Buc-ee's pays extremely well. They'll pay their managers anywhere from 150 to 200,000 a year. Buc-ee's does. So I know a lot of times in economic development, then retail's dismissed because it's such a low wage, but really managers of retail brands often get paid more than non-retail jobs. So the reason retail jobs the wages are lower is because a lot of time of them are entry level, they're part-time, they're temporary, they're seasonal. And if you average all that, it'll bring those wages down, but it doesn't mean that all of those jobs are that lower wage. So you can see where there's a large amount of employees here, could be up to 200 per store, which I think is pretty extraordinary when you get into that, how many employees it is, even though they're part-time, seasonal, and temporary. Um, they do want to open about, or they analyze about 1,000 sites, and then they'll open about 30, 25 to 30 of those a year. So again, a high rate of turning down stores. They typically want that median household income of around 100,000 that's in their area, and they do want college educated students. So there's a little bit about breaking this down um, on Wally's and how they're different from Buc-ee's. Okay, let's go into the Trader Joe's. I know we all love Trader Joe's. We want them. Again, this is a German-owned company that is international. As you know, their average store will do about 26 million, and they are extremely picky about their real estate as well. They look at a lot of stores, and they want to be in areas that are really overeducated, underpaid. That's what they're going to go for, and own the majority of their SKUs and their products. So, one thing I think it's important to know about Trader Joe's is if they're looking for, um, a really dense population, they're not going to go somewhere that doesn't have a high density and people that are going to shop there. And they're looking for specifically their customer within your area. Parking's critical to them. They will not negotiate on the parking. They have to have a 5 to 1 ratio of 5 parking spots for every 1,000 square feet, 5 parking spots that are outside of it. And they are really going to go into access. They need really good ingress, egress, and they need really good visibility in a high trafficked area. So they won't always take just a traditional grocery anchored shopping center. They're going to go more for the unique hub of a larger MSA. The MSA might be 2 million people, and they're going to go where they can have the best access to the wealth in that area and get the best traffic for cross shopping. And they are a destination retailer, so people do come to them, and that's what the landlords really like. If they can lease to Trader Joe's, they know they're going to get that cross shopping. And they will not open a store until they have a manager fully hired and trained for at least 6 months. So they're very, very particular about their customer service. And they have great employee benefits and perks. As you can see down here, hourly wages might be up to $22 an hour. So let's go, sticking with Trader Joe's. Let's go with Aldi. You're still in that German-owned grocery category with Aldi, which is the same group that owns Trader Joe's. So they have an extremely efficient model, and so they have about 1,400 SKUs that they own versus the Trader Joe's having about 4,000 SKUs. They're really designed for speed. The customers bag their own groceries. They have a quarterly deposit, or you put a quarter in the shopping cart there so that you can return your shopping cart. There's no frills about this. And they have a smaller footprint. You can see that on average, it takes about 2.5 acres, about 2,200 square feet. And Aldi will basically get right next to another grocery store. So you can go to Aldi and buy what you want and then fill in the gaps at the other grocery store, whether that's HEB or Publix or a Walmart or any of the other brands. So it's going to be a model where you can go in, get what you need, and then go across the street to fill in the gaps on Aldi. I mean, on your groceries. So, average unit will do about 17 million in sales. And so as you can see, that runs to about a little over $600 a foot. And that's a very efficient model with sales. They typically want about 20,000 vehicles per day in a densely populated area. They will do a build to suit with a developer or outright purchase the real estate that they're in. Um, they really don't do a lot of negotiations. They know what their deal is, they know they're in high demand, and so they name it and get us in the right location. Um, they really like a clustering approach. So they would like to open 10 to 15 stores within a region to really support their distribution and their network. They really need to be within 200 miles of a warehouse. And so that's one thing to look at. If you want an Aldi, then where's their closest warehouse and how many other locations are in your area. They're really currently filling in the Southeast and the Southwest in their expansion plans. Okay, now let's look at Target. Target is a public company, so they have to be accountable to their shareholders. And I'm tomorrow, I'll see the director of real estate for Target, Lori Mahalawald. So I'm looking forward to hearing her updates. They really have two different store types. So they have the large footprint and the small footprint. The small footprint's really going to be in urban cores, and they're not doing as much of this anymore, but they'll go on college campuses or right in downtowns of major metropolitan areas. What we're seeing more of is this expansion that's between 120 and 135,000 square feet. And we're so thrilled to see them expanding again because they really didn't do as much expansion really during the Great Recession was about the last time they aggressively expanded. And so in 2024, 2025, they started growing again, which I love. The average unit volume is for the small footprint, it's about 54 million. For the large footprint, it's closer to 150 million. So that sales per square foot comes into play there, little over 400 bucks a foot. You can see where they pay employees anywhere from 15 to 24, and their managers will make about 120 to 163 average thousand, 163,000 on average annually. So that's a pretty good wage for the managers that are there. And system wide, they employ about 44,000 people. So it's really worth looking at if there's this 200 employees at those wages, compare that with maybe some of the manufacturing plants that you're recruiting. And is it worth focusing on Target to the same level and potentially even considering incentives with them to that same level? So let's look at also to how Target is an anchor. So what happens when Target locates is all the usual suspects will follow that Target power center. So a lot of times Target can get away with owning their land, or if they are to lease, then they're going to do that at a kind of like a loss leader. They're going to be able to come in at a much lower cost because the developer will make the money on the rest of the shopping center where they can charge the higher rents or higher rates. And so they truly are an anchor for a larger core that creates the retail synergy that keeps people coming back and looks at that cross shopping. Now they will, and for their small format strategy, they will take second generation space. The majority of their full size ones, they're going to look for ground up new construction. They really are starting to do a couple things. One, their private labels, Good and Gather, All in Motion, Cat and Jack. Those are all helping drive margins for them. They also have some great partnership collaborations with Ulta. And they have, so the Ulta is within the Target. Starbucks Cafe, as you know, is within Target. And in some stores, they even have a Disney within the store. So this collaboration is helping to drive sales and people into the store, which is a great way to be creative. The big focus now we're seeing is looking at this omni-channeling strategy, which is really fully integrating online sales with the brick and mortar. they're taking a large portion of their stores and making it like a mini fulfillment center. So you can order online and then go pick up the things you need. And it's also changing the way they build their parking lot. So there's areas in that are for the order pickup, there's drive up, there's shipped parking. And so this is really changing the way that their design is coming into play. Another thing Target's really looking at is theft. Unfortunately, there's organized retail crime. And so there's a line item of shrink that has about doubled for them over the last 3 years. And so they're working really hard on designing their stores to try to mitigate the kind of five-finger discount that unfortunately is hitting Target pretty hard. It's also hitting CVS, Walgreens, um, Walmart, and Home Depot and Lowe's pretty badly. So that's why, at a CVS, you see things that are kind of behind the glass. Target's trying to avoid that, but they're trying to figure out how they can do everything they can to mitigate the store theft, which is a problem. Um, what economic developers need to know about Target is that they are really doubling down on they're going to close underperforming stores and they're going to double down on the winning stores. So if you have a store that performs really well, they're going to put a big investment into that to renovate it to make it fit this in-store pickup model. So a lot of those that renovation could take about 6 months or so, but they're putting money back into the stores. And also that's going to be focused on that mini fulfillment center that you can see. They are open to incentives for the large product. It's less common for the smaller product. Okay, let's talk about Chick-fil-A. This is the one we hear the most in the request, at least in the Southeast. This is not as so much with our California clients, but in the Southeast, a lot of communities I visit with want to know what the deal is with Chick-fil-A. So I'll go ahead and tell you it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to win a franchise for Chick-fil-A. They accept an extremely small, I think I saw 0.03% of the applicants for a Chick-fil-A franchise actually receive that franchise. Their model is that you work in a store for several years, you fully perfect the customer service model before you get to take on your own store. And they really typically it's one store per one franchisee. Now, in some cases, they'll grow that number, but they really want you to feel local as a part of the community and be extremely well trained in their Chick-fil-A model before they'll give you a franchise. They do well. As you can see here, a freestanding Chick-fil-A will do over $9 million. So apply your local sales tax rate to that and see the economic impact of a Chick-fil-A. The drive-through is so absolutely critical, and Chick-fil-A really killed it during the pandemic because they had this down. And they'll do multiple stacks on the drive-through, and they'll even do these stations where you order online and they bring it out to your car. So that is really important. That's because so much of their sales is actually done outside of their prototype. And Chick-fil-A, like a lot of QSRs, they're shrinking their in-store model, and they're expanding their asphalt, if you will, so that they can do more drive-through and pickup. So you can see that they're paying around $14 an hour. An average store will have anywhere from 40 to 60 employees, and they do believe in scholarships, so they do give those to their employees. Now, they are privately owned by the Cathy family, and it's a faith-based organization. As you know, they're closed on Sunday, and they've stayed true to that. So I think it's remarkable to look at that sales volume, knowing that they're closed on Sunday. They own or lease the majority of their real estate, and the franchisee receives about 15% of sales, but has no equity in the business. So that's Yep, let's see what other notes I have. Yeah, their faith-based family community involvement is very important to them. And they do have a national site selection team that chooses the markets. So they're going to approve for the real estate first, and then they will find the franchisee to plug into that. And sometimes it will require relocation of that franchisee. They get about 100 site submissions a week. So they're very particular about the sites that they're going to um, take on. So when they, let's see, in 2024, they did about 132 new locations. In 2025, they plan for about 180. So they are still expanding. And a lot of their focus right now is in the Midwest. So, and Pacific Northwest to fill in some areas. They're doing a lot of non-traditional sites as well at airports, colleges, hospitals, and those that are operated by institutions. So incentives are pretty rare for them. They really are more focused on the long-term economic outcomes of Chick-fil-A. Not saying they won't take an incentive. It's just a little bit more rare because they're going to choose the right location first. So, okay, 1.6 acres. All right, let's move forward. Speaking of chicken, I know Chick-fil-A is the most important, but we've seen the biggest expansion in brands within chicken and also in beverage. So let's focus on chicken first. Um, why is chicken just exploding right now? There's been a big increase in emphasis for uh, protein intake, and chicken is a lower calorie, lower fat version of protein intake. And really, the millennials and Gen Zs, about 60% of them prefer chicken over beef. And that's what's driving a lot of this. And a lot of times the price point's a little better. A chicken sandwich might be, $5 to $8 versus a burger being anywhere from 8 to 12. So it's a combination of health and also price point that's driving the chicken wars. And you can see there's a variety of different brands here that are all very aggressively expanding in this space. So what differentiates them? A lot of them will have just a different flavor innovation, if you will. So, like a Nashville hot chicken versus a Korean fried chicken versus a Cajun chicken, those are all going to be different. So, let's talk about Dave's Hot Chicken. This is going to be, it's like a Nashville hot chicken brand. You can see they were founded in 2017. About 360 locations and about 1,200 in their pipeline. So they're growing pretty aggressively. That about $1 billion infused through work capital. And so that private equity play is helping them grow. They plan to do about 150 to 165 new locations in 2025. And they're okay with ghost kitchens. And if you don't know what a ghost kitchen is, essentially it will go in non-traditional retail real estate sites that maybe more an industrial area, and there's no front of house. It is just the kitchen, and they will deliver the food out of that ghost kitchen. So their cost of entry is lower. They don't have to worry about the front of house sales, and they're open to that. The drive-through is optional here, and they don't mind strip centers, food halls, or standalone locations. Raising Cane's, we're really starting to see more from them. They're really a single product focused. They have chicken fingers only, and they opened about 118 locations in 2024, about 100 in 2025, and they have about 300 in their pipeline to be opened. They're entirely company owned, no franchising, and their founder actually is involved with every single real estate site decision that they make. They on average size, they're about 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. They're going to do about 6 million in sales per a location. And they're really spotted to be one of the most aggressively growing in the future, long-term play with Raising Cane's. Okay, Wingstop, more familiar brand in that about almost 350 new locations globally in 2024. So they have about 2,000 in the pipeline. Again, this is a global expansion, and they are targeting to do about 7,000 globally. So 2,000 currently in the pipeline, goal of 7,000, and they're about 98% franchise owned. So digital sales is a big part of what they do, and they have a smaller footprint, about 1,200 to 1,800 square feet. And they've had 21 years of consecutive same store sales. So that gives investors a lot of confidence in them that they're continuing to grow at that rate. Let's go with Slim Chickens here. Slim Chickens is an Arkansas-based brand, about 300 locations that they've grown to, and they want to add another 600. So you can see the franchise is a big part of that growth strategy for them. They really want to get up to 1,000 in the US and 500 international. So they really just go with quality, a better chicken, tender, and they really lean in on the southern roots based out of Arkansas. Crispy Crunch Chicken has about 3,200 locations, and they are more of they're convenience chicken within a convenience store, basically a gas station. So that's their model. They're going to partner with convenience stores, gas stations, and grocery stores. They want to do about 600 new locations, and this is going to be more Cajun style chicken. So, with all these chicken brands, typically they're going to take about 1 to 2 acres versus most burger concepts, which will take about 2 to 3 acres. A drive-through is critical for the majority of these. Most of these are going to be franchise driven, except for Chick-fil-A and Raising Cane's, but the rest will need a local franchisee. And um, what happens a lot of times, with the exception, not Chick-fil-A, but the other brands, is they'll want the franchisee to buy a package of 5 to 10 units that they'll open over time. And then that will help them on more of a regional expansion plan. So think about that regionally. If you find you want one of these brands, you don't have them, find who owns the franchise next door in your neighboring community. And the site selection criteria greatly varies from brand to brand here, but typically you're going to do about 1 acre single tenant build to suit. One of the reasons these are really popular from a real estate perspective is going to be because, as I mentioned in the beginning, that new construction is hard to do if you're building a large shopping center. And so that takes 3 to 5 years to put together, and the timeline on these is much, much quicker. If you're just doing 1 acre, reduces the risk for the developer and that's why they like chicken, and also why they like beverage and coffee. There's so much happening in coffee. So drive-through coffee is one of the fastest growing segments in the whole industry, actually a 25% growth from 2020 to 2024 in the number of units that opened. The average ticket price is anywhere from $5 to $8 for these coffee brands. It's not that different from a quick service restaurant. A full meal might be $10 to $15, and they're getting this for coffee. So high profit margins, which have been very effective. They typically see a customer 3 times a week, and versus a fast food restaurant, which might see a customer 1 time a week. You get in the habit. It's that repeat business that is so popular. Now, I'll say these national coffee chains are so different from your local coffee shop downtown. You're going to go through these in a drive through in a hurry because you are just trying to get your coffee on your way to work or the way to school. Now, the downtown coffee shop is critically important for people to come and have an experience and hang out and build a sense of community. So, I do want to encourage you to think about how the consumer experience for national brands versus local brands is polar opposite, and there's room for both. Once you become a coffee addict, then you're going to want to support all of them depending on your timeline. So let's go into a few key ones to highlight here. Black Rock Coffee has about 158 locations across 7 states. Their IPO raised about almost 300 million at 1.3 billion valuation in January of 2025. They plan to open about 215 locations in 2026 and about 250 in 2027. So this is a very small footprint, about 350 square feet. And they have a really quick window. So this is all drive-through driven. Now let's look at Dutch Bros. About 900 locations across 18 states. They are a public company. They're looking to grow about 150 annually, entirely drive-through model, no indoor seating. And they're all about high energy, music, connection. They have proprietary energy drinks that are really get you hooked. And their real estate is usually can be on as low as half an acre, could even be as small as 1,000 square feet. Scooters Coffee, about 700 locations in 30 states. This is a franchise model. Typically, the investment is anywhere from 800,000 to 1.5 million to invest in one of those franchises. They have a drive-through and a walk-up window, very much like Dutch Bros. They promise speed and service. And so their typical size is going to be a little bit smaller at 600 to 800 square feet. And they're looking to expand in the Southeast and the Mid Atlantic. Then we're going to go with Seven Brew. This one is an Arkansas based company that has about 250 locations, about 500 in development. This is entirely a drive through format. 7 days a week, they're open early and they're open late. So they are a standalone building and they have a bold color that they're looking at, targeting secondary markets anywhere from 50,000 to 150,000 in population. So if you haven't seen some of these top brands I just mentioned open in your community, then they're worth targeting because they're aggressively expanding and opening, all over the country. Okay, so one thing to know, just to recap on this, they typically take less than an acre. And so they can be in small areas. Traffic counts matter. They want to be on the going to work side of the road, the AM side of the road. So if you think about where the rooftops are and where people work, they want to be on that side of the road. The key for them is expediting permitting. They need a quick approval process, about 6 to 9 months. They don't have time. They're with this big expansion plans. If you make it hard for them to get a permit, they're going to go to the next city over. So that's the way you can add the most value to these groups. And also making sure that the drive-through is allowed per your codes in the areas. It's what you want as a city, but areas that don't restrict drive-throughs are going to be really important to them. Okay, so let's look at some of the other brands that we're seeing within the top 8 in these categories. So I hit on some of these already, highlighted them, but Dave's Hot Chicken is really growing the fastest, Raising Cane's. You can see the average unit volume, which I think is just remarkable to know that they have chicken only and they're doing over 6 million a year in sales. Chipotle continues to really gain our loyalty and what they did during the pandemic. And that really shifted them to drive through and pick up and delivery, which they've continued to lean in on. So they just keep setting records. Jersey Mike's, we're seeing a lot from them. The $8 billion investment from Blackstone last year is just evidence of how well they're doing in the real estate strategy. And we talked about Wingstop, Chick-fil-A already. Taco Bell is growing again. So they'll do about 2 to 3 million on average. And they're still owned by Yum Brands and then Slim Chickens. All right, let's get into, now that we've talked about food, hopefully you're hungry with the chicken and the coffee. Go ahead and submit your questions. We have about 13 minutes left. I'm getting close to wrapping this up. Here's something that we're always looking at are what we call the junior boxes, right? So I talked about Target earlier, and then your junior boxes are going to follow the Target. And then the coffee and the chicken are going to go in the out parcels. So what are we seeing with junior boxes? And by junior box, I typically mean that their size is going to be, most of these are going to run around 8,000 square feet to about 25,000 square feet. But let's just say on average, they're going to be about 15 to 20,000 square feet typically. So they are the brands that are really growing and expanding right now are going to be in this off-price model. And that has grown from 2019 to today. It just continues to grow. As we saw a decline of department stores and moving out of the malls, filing bankruptcy, then that has led to an increase in these junior box sales that still lean in on discount, but they're kind of still the same model of a department store and how you shop. Now, I mentioned some of them that took Big Lots, Bed Bath and Beyond, and Party City that filed bankruptcy. That has been a big part of the growth strategy for these brands. they're going to look for those bankruptcies and backfill that space. And their customer they're targeting is somebody who really wants to value hunt. They like the experience of digging through things and finding those bargains. So Five Below has about 1,800 locations, as you can see, and they want about 150 net new. But there's no stopping them for that long-term play of how aggressive they want to get. This is like the this is like the Dollar General for soccer moms, is the way I've heard it described. And so they're going to have discounted items. Everything in there is less than $5, and it's all the stuff you never knew that you absolutely need to have. Right? You can see how aggressively they took over about 44 of the Party City leases, and this was a good move for them. Burlington also took over several of the Bed Bath and Beyond leases. So that was their big part of their growth strategy. Ollie's here is continuing to grow. And this is a good example of where Big Lots filed bankruptcy and they had excluded Ollie's from those shopping centers. So this left a really good play for them. They typically have about 32,000 square feet. So they took over about 63 of the Big Lots leases. It's just a really great fit for them in those boxes. So they're going to be closeout merchandise. It's just good, cheap stuff is what they're going for. They seek B to C real estate and A demographic markets. Now, TJX companies, you see here that TJ Maxx, Home Goods, Marshalls, Sierra, it's all the different versions of the TJX companies, which are continuing to grow very aggressively. We love these brands. So what we're seeing is about 30 new Home Goods and about 20 new Sierra Home stores. Home Goods is probably the fastest growing of these, about 30 new. Well, and then you see that the Marshalls is that combo. The Mirex is the combo of TJX and Marshalls. So used to they would divide TJ Maxx or Marshalls depending on the income levels of the areas. So they're starting to pull those together. Boot Barn, you can see, is about 70 new locations. They're targeting 1,200 new in the long-term strategy. And this one's a little bit smaller in the 10,000 square feet area that they're going to take this, the real estate, and they're planning on about a 15% growth. So what do you need to know? How do you need to think about it? They're going to typically want below market rents. Most of these did single digit rents per square feet. Now they know they have to push that up a little bit, but just like Target, they're going to pay a little more than Target per square foot. But still, if you get 3 or 4 of these junior boxes lined up, then that's going to leave room for all the shop space that is going to be 1,200 square foot bays. And that's where more rent can come in. So they know they need to pay more rent. The product of more rent has to come from more sales. And so more sales is really consumers leaning in on these brands, and they're really working hard to capture that wallet share and trying to figure out how they can value engineer their stores so that they can reduce the construction cost and the internal build out cost that they have. Most of these require a distribution center nearby, and they really care about traffic drivers of retail synergy. A lot of them want to see each other close by, their friends, their peers who are going to help in that cross shopping. And on average, they'll do anywhere from $200 a foot to $400 a foot in sales. That's typically what you're going to look at with these brands. So I know that was a lot of information that I threw at you, and I do want to go back and recap something that in the beginning that I think I misspoke on, that I just want to make a correction on is Wally's. I think I said that they're German owned. That actually is not correct. They're private equity backed, and that is TPG Capital that has the Wally's. And a little bit about them is they are all franchised model. So I did want to make that clarification because I realized that I misspoke when I said that earlier. So let's look at our questions. What do we have here? What is submitted in the chat? A few of you have submitted questions, and we have about 6 minutes left, so that should be good. Again, these slides will be available to you, and at Retail Strategies, we're always just here to help. So any questions that we don't get to today, then we can follow up with you, or questions that I don't know how to answer. So one of the questions is about there specific brands that follow Trader Joe's, similar to how CVS and Walgreens locate next to each other. Man, that's a great question. And you're absolutely right about how retailers really prefer to cluster. They want to be right on top of each other versus get away from their versus be on the other side of town from their competitor. They would rather be in the parking lot of their competitor than provide too much separation there. So, what I see with Trader Joe's is going to be more, they want the luxury shopping. So, anywhere that you have a lifestyle center with luxury, that's going to be ideal to them. So, they want highly educated consumers, high density, and typically in an MSA of about 2 million or more. So, Travis, thank you for submitting that question. And we can get with some specific brands. I know the ones that are coming to my mind, but I want to make sure that's true nationwide and the brands I'm thinking that they co-locate with. So, we'll get back to you in more detail on those brands. At what point does chicken and coffee get saturated? Thank you, Greg, for that great question. That's, we think about these movements that we have where it was pizza for a while. And then you remember the frozen yogurt movement, I'm sure, right? They got saturated and then a lot of them closed. And so there was pizza, and then it was the better burger movement. And now we're in the chicken and we're in the coffee. And it really is that there is a chance that it'll hit saturation at some point. What I think is really different about these two categories specifically is that people drink coffee typically 7 days a week. And so there's a lot of room for more. It might cut into Starbucks average annual sales a little bit. We'll see. We're going to watch and try to determine how it might impact them, because historically, Starbucks has been the dominant player in this space. But so far, we haven't seen chicken get diminished. They're continuing to grow. But the other category we're seeing a lot of growth in is car wash spaces. And so I'll be curious to see how that plays out over time. Now, one of the questions here is a brand like Aldi wants to be about 200 miles from their warehouse or distribution center. Are there other non-grocery brands in your list that have a sensitivity to their warehouse locations? Now, are these going to be QSRs or larger markets, junior box? Man, great question, Andy. And yes, this is where the fulfillment centers and the distribution centers are important, but they're going to be more important within the grocery, and especially specific to private label grocery, than they would be with some of the other categories like apparel, where you don't have products that are expiring. So I know that like 7-Eleven, for instance, they have to be within a certain radius of a commissary kitchen because they're going to sell fresh food. And you're going to see that radius really shrink down for a grocery store, where it can be much larger for the products that don't have an expiration on them. But you're right. It's important for retailers when they're entering a new market, like Publix, for instance. When they go into a new MSA, they want to put at least 5 stores into that area so they can share in distribution, brand awareness, and management, those 3 things. So this is where you can have a regional play with your colleagues and other economic development directors that are there. Great questions to each of you. I'll wrap up a few closing thoughts in the last couple of minutes that we have here. things to think about in site selection. Number one, traffic, raw traffic patterns. Do you know the number of vehicles per day on your highway? If you don't, find that out. We can help at Retail Strategies, or you can get it from your Department of Transportation. And traffic is very important. So look at that. Look at demographics. The key things are going to be population, income, education level, and daytime population, which is going to be the workers. Residential matters, but daytime is just as important. And then a tapestry segmentation, which is basically the personality of the area. They're going to look at competition. So they want to be right near their competition. It creates that synergy that they like, but they want to outposition them based on traffic patterns. So you can really help with traffic patterns. You might have the raw count, but what can you bring for the patterns? I think that's an important differentiator. And then let's look at accessibility. Is there good ingress, egress, and traffic lights? They don't typically like a mid-block site. They would rather be on a hard corner with a traffic signal so that people can easily get in and out of those places. They do not like when there's a median and people can't cross over the street either. Those create some confusion with customers. So think about that whenever you're designing how it will impact your retail. Parking, I said it earlier, it's typically about 5 spaces per every 1,000 square feet. And retailers want that parking right in front of their door so you can park and see the sign and see the front door the whole way in. And this is where national brands are different from local brands, is parking really matters. ADA compliance matters, fire lanes and access, and then also truck access in the back so they can deliver their product through the loading dock behind the building. So think about all those things. What does this mean to you? Timing is everything. Look at your entitlements, your permits, and really try to expedite those things. That's the biggest complaint I'm hearing right now from retailers and developers is it takes too long to get a permit and it's killing deals and it creates a lot of frustration. So do what you can on that side. Some will ask for incentives, some won't. Typically, you're going to give the incentive to the developer versus directly to the retailer. So keep that in mind. And what really kills deals is unrealistic land prices from your landowners. Anything you can do to provide comps and help them get in line. Utility capacity is a challenge, or I know you know that. We're seeing that nationwide, but it's starting to get into retail as well about where the transformers are. And then anything around neighborhood opposition, then that is very that's something that can kill a deal. And you may want that, you may not, but it's something to think about. You can help navigate. What I'm working on and my team at Retail Strategies is constantly educating the developers, retailers, and brokers that they need to reach out to you, the economic development directors, to help them navigate the local waters. And that will help them in timelines and that make deals happen that might not happen otherwise. Again, thank you for your time today at Retail Strategies. You can scan this QR code for a free gap analysis. We're happy to follow up with you. Reach out to us and thank you for your time today. Have a great day. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Lacey, for sharing your time and expertise today. And thank you to all the SEDC members who showed up to this webinar today. This is the end, but we hope we'll see you all soon. So have a great day.